Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this prophetic morning encounter. Today is not an ordinary Friday. Today is a day of divine alignment, a day of destiny shaping, a day when heaven responds to the cry of your heart. Let me begin with this question. What would happen if the first words you spoke each morning carried the authority to shape the rest of your day? Your morning is prophetic. Means that the first hours of your day carry a spiritual, mental, and even physical significance that influences everything that follows. Morning is not just a routine, it is a gate, a spiritual portal through which you step into the possibilities of the day. When you wake up, your mind is fresh, your heart is open, and your spirit is most sensitive to divine direction. This is why many successful people, both spiritually and naturally, emphasize morning rituals. The morning has always been a moment where destiny can be shaped and the atmosphere of your life can be determined. In scripture and in life, morning is often symbolic of new beginnings. It is a reset button given by God. Each sunrise brings a fresh opportunity to change the trajectory of your life, regardless of what happened yesterday. Morning reminds you that yesterday's failures do not define today's victories. The night may represent battles, struggles, and even tears, but the morning speaks of joy, renewal, and divine alignment. The way you handle your morning is a prophecy of how your day will unfold. If you wake up speaking defeat, you invite defeat into your activities. If you wake up speaking life, faith, and thanksgiving, you create an atmosphere where blessings manifest. The prophetic nature of the morning is rooted in the principle of firsts. Whatever you give your first attention to often governs everything else. Giving your first thoughts to God, declaring words of power at the break of day, and setting your priorities in order all shape the outcomes you will experience. A morning filled with complaints, anxiety, or distractions prophesies a day filled with frustration. But a morning dedicated to prayer, declarations, and focus becomes a seed that produces peace, clarity, and breakthroughs. The prophetic is about creating outcomes through intentional actions, and mornings provide the most fertile soil for this. Think about the atmosphere of your mind when you first rise from sleep. Your subconscious has been resting, and now it is ready to receive direction. If the first voices you hear are negative, your day bends toward negativity. If the first actions you take are wasted on distractions, your day tends to spiral into wasted time. But if the first voice you hear is the voice of God in prayer, if the first action you take is to align yourself with purpose, then your morning becomes a declaration that the rest of the day will align with heaven's agenda for you. The prophetic nature of morning also lies in its discipline. How you manage the early hours of your day often mirrors how you will manage opportunities, responsibilities, and even relationships. Someone who neglects the morning usually struggles with order throughout the day. On the other hand, someone who commands their morning through structure, prayer, and declarations creates a flow of grace, productivity, and divine favor. Morning is not neutral. It is a spiritual law that what you sow into it, you will reap throughout the day. Your morning is prophetic because it carries both the authority of speech and the power of atmosphere. You are either inviting heaven or tolerating chaos. Each word spoken in the early hours is like a seed released into the soil of time, waiting to bear fruit later in the day. When you say, "Today will be blessed," you are not just motivating yourself. You are sending words ahead into your meetings, your assignments, your interactions, and your challenges. The unseen realm responds to declarations, and the morning is the best time to release them because it is the beginning, the seed time, the moment of influence. Your morning is also prophetic in that it demands intentionality. Without deliberate control, Mornings are easily stolen by distractions, messages, or tasks that create pressure. When you lose your morning, you often lose your peace and productivity. But when you guard it, when you give it to God, when you frame it with declarations, it becomes a prophecy fulfilled in your favor. This is why the morning is not casual. It is destiny's gate, and whoever controls the morning controls the day. Your words are powerful is a principle that carries both spiritual and practical truth. Words are not just sounds or letters arranged to communicate. They are forces that shape reality, influence atmosphere, and create outcomes. From the beginning of time, creation itself was initiated by words. The account of Genesis reveals that the universe did not begin with physical actions, but with divine speech. Let there be light, and light appeared. This shows that words carry within them the power to create, to call things into existence, and to shape what has not yet been seen. On a human level, the same principle applies. Words act as seeds planted into the soil of life, and in due season, they produce harvests of either blessing or destruction, depending on what was spoken. A careless word can break trust, destroy relationships, or plant fear in someone's heart, while a word of encouragement can heal, inspire, and awaken purpose in another. Every conversation releases either life or death, hope or despair, faith or doubt. This is why speech is never neutral. The vibrations of words echo into the unseen realm, aligning circumstances either for good or for evil. The power of words is also evident in the way they shape identity. What you repeatedly say about yourself becomes the narrative you live by. A person who constantly declares, "I am a failure," is programming their mind, emotions, and actions to align with that confession. In contrast, someone who consistently affirms, "I am blessed, I am capable, I am favored," is programming their entire being to rise to those declarations. The human brain is designed to respond to repeated speech, building neurological pathways that reinforce the spoken reality. Thus, words not only influence the spiritual realm, but also rewire the physical brain to align with belief. Words also frame the atmosphere around us. A family where constant criticism and negativity are spoken becomes heavy with strife, while a home where words of love, honor, and gratitude are spoken becomes filled with peace and unity. Leaders who inspire with vision and hope can change the course of nations simply through words, while leaders who speak fear and division can plunge societies into chaos. This reveals that words are carriers of spirit. They transmit what is within a person into the environment around them, shaping collective reality. In personal battles, words serve as weapons. When faced with fear, declaring faith-filled words can shift your internal posture from defeat to victory. When confronted with sickness, words of healing and scripture can release strength into the soul and align the body toward recovery. Words of prayer are especially powerful because they are not only declarations, but also legal petitions in the courts of heaven, inviting divine intervention. This is why silence in the face of challenges often empowers the problem, but speaking God's promises over the situation releases authority. Another dimension of the power of words is that they have generational impact. The blessings or curses spoken over children often mark them for life. A parent who repeatedly tells a child, "You are useless," is unknowingly programming them for insecurity and failure. A parent who says, "You are destined for greatness," is planting seeds that can flourish decades later. This demonstrates that words are not bound by time. They travel into the future and manifest long after they are spoken. The spiritual law behind words is simple: you attract what you confess. Speech is the bridge between belief and manifestation. What resides in the heart becomes real when expressed through words. The tongue may appear small, but it directs the course of life just like a rudder directs the movement of a massive ship. This is why constant discipline over words is crucial. Speaking carelessly is like scattering seeds without care. Some will grow into thorns that choke life, while others may grow into weeds that steal energy from what is fruitful. Intentional speech ensures that only seeds of destiny are planted. Words are powerful because they align you with either heaven's agenda or the adversary's plan. Speaking in agreement with God's promises activates angelic activity and divine order. Speaking in agreement with fear or negativity creates an atmosphere that attracts confusion and defeat. Every time words leave your mouth, they are not empty. They are assignments, servants sent into the environment to build or to destroy, to heal or to wound, to bless or to curse. The enemy targets your morning, highlights a spiritual principle that the first hours of the day are not just moments of routine, but gateways that determine the flow of the entire day. And because of this, they are often attacked by distractions, discouragement, and confusion. The enemy understands that mornings carry prophetic power. They are times of sensitivity, clarity, and openness, where the human spirit is most impressionable. If he can interfere at that gate, he can plant seeds of fear, worry, or defeat that will grow and dominate the hours that follow. This is why many people wake up with sudden heaviness, unexplained anxiety, or distractions that consume their attention before they even have a chance to focus on God or on purpose. The morning is often the moment of decision. What you allow into your heart and mind at the beginning of the day becomes the atmosphere you carry into every task, relationship, and responsibility. The enemy aims to steal that atmosphere because he knows that if he can corrupt your first thoughts, he can corrupt your faith. For example, beginning the day by scrolling through negative news or social media arguments plants irritation and fear that linger throughout the day. Many believers experience battles in their mornings, not because the day itself is evil, but because the enemy knows that the morning is the gate. He aims to occupy the gate with noise so that prayer, thanksgiving, and prophetic declarations are neglected. When people neglect their mornings, they often find themselves reacting to life instead of shaping it. The enemy thrives in reaction. He wants you to be distracted by urgent matters that drown out important spiritual disciplines. This is why many wake up with sudden pressure, emails, bills, responsibilities, calls that demand immediate attention. These things are not always evil in themselves, but when they dominate your morning, they steal the prophetic opportunity of alignment with God. The strategy is subtle. If your morning is rushed, anxious, or careless, the rest of the day will follow the same pattern. The enemy also targets the morning with spiritual heaviness. There are individuals who rise with unexplained fatigue or mental fog that makes prayer seem impossible. Others experience an unusual laziness that keeps them in bed longer than they planned, robbing them of valuable time. This is not always natural. Sometimes it is a spiritual strategy. By making mornings unproductive, he ensures the day begins already in defeat. Once the morning is wasted, guilt sets in, and people carry that guilt like a weight, weakening their confidence in prayer and productivity. Another way the enemy targets the morning is through conflict. Many families and marriages experience unnecessary arguments in the early hours, small misunderstandings that erupt before work or school. The result is a day poisoned by strife and regret. This is intentional because he understands that when your heart is heavy with offense or anger, it becomes harder to focus, harder to pray, and harder to manifest joy. By attacking relationships in the morning, he corrupts the environment of the entire household. The morning is also attacked with fear of the unknown. People often wake up thinking about debts, unfinished projects, or uncertain futures. These thoughts, if left unchecked, become prophetic declarations of worry. Fear is a tool the enemy uses to dominate the imagination. And the morning is the most fertile ground for planting it, because the mind is fresh from rest. If those seeds take root, the entire day bends under their weight. Understanding that the enemy targets the morning reveals why it is critical to protect that time. Just as soldiers guard the gates of a city, because enemies attack at the weakest point, you must guard your mornings, because they are gates of destiny. Every distraction, every heaviness, every sudden conflict is designed to rob you of spiritual focus. The strategy is clear. If the enemy can own your morning, he can influence your day. And if he can influence your day, he can gradually influence your life. This is why discipline in commanding your morning through prayer, declarations, and focus is non-negotiable. Christian story teaches us is a reminder that the choices we make in our daily routines, especially in the mornings, can shape the outcomes of our lives in profound ways. Kristen was not unlike many others. She loved God and desired progress, but her mornings were often filled with chaos. The moment she woke up, her phone was the first thing she reached for, and her mind became saturated with messages, deadlines, and the pressures of the day. This constant rush left her drained, anxious, and unfocused. She would begin her mornings without prayer, without reflection, and without intentional direction. And the result was that her entire day felt overwhelming and fruitless. This cycle repeated itself until she realized that the way she began her day was prophesying the way she ended it. The turning point in Kristen's life came when she made the decision to honor God with the first portion of her morning. Instead of reaching for her phone, she began to reach for her Bible. Instead of drowning in worry, she started declaring words of life and victory. She carved out just 15 minutes of stillness, time to worship, time to pray, time to speak scripture over her life. This small but intentional shift became the seed that transformed her entire atmosphere. Kristen's story shows us that change does not always begin with massive actions, but with small, consistent choices made at the right time. The first lesson her story teaches is that mornings carry a unique influence. They set the tone for the rest of the day. When she began to dedicate her mornings to God, she found that peace began to guard her heart. Problems did not disappear instantly, but her response to them changed. Instead of reacting with fear, she responded with faith. Instead of carrying confusion, she carried clarity. Her mornings became a prophetic declaration that the rest of her day would align with order and divine guidance. The second lesson is the power of discipline. Kristen's transformation was not the result of a one-time act, but of consistent commitment. At first, it was difficult to ignore the pull of distractions, but as she kept choosing prayer and scripture, her spirit grew stronger than her impulses. This discipline became the foundation for a lifestyle of intentional living. Her story teaches us that true change is not birthed in comfort, but in consistency. What begins as a struggle eventually becomes a habit, and that habit shapes destiny. Another lesson is the principle of atmosphere. By inviting God into her mornings, Kristen shifted the spiritual climate of her life. Atmosphere matters because it influences emotions, decisions, and even productivity. A chaotic morning creates a chaotic day, but a peaceful, prayerful morning creates a day filled with clarity and direction. Kristen's choice to cultivate a spiritual atmosphere in her mornings allowed her to walk into meetings, challenges, and relationships with confidence. She became an example of how a simple shift in atmosphere can lead to breakthroughs in multiple areas of life. Her story also emphasizes the power of words. When she began her mornings by declaring scriptures and positive confessions, those words went ahead of her to shape her experiences. Words are seeds, and her declarations became harvests of favor, provision, and strength. Her testimony reminds us that silence in the morning allows circumstances to dictate the day, but speaking life in the morning empowers you to dictate your circumstances. Finally, Kristen's story teaches us that transformation begins internally before it is visible externally. Her job did not suddenly change. Her challenges did not immediately disappear, but her inner posture was renewed. That renewal created a ripple effect that eventually influenced her external reality. Her mornings became a training ground for victory, and over time, her life aligned with the declarations she was making. Her story is a witness that when you command your mornings with intentionality, you command your destiny with authority. Prophetic declarations matter. Emphasizes the truth that spoken words, especially those rooted in faith and scripture, carry the authority to shape outcomes, redirect situations, and align life with divine purpose. Declarations are not casual affirmations. They are intentional pronouncements made with conviction that release power into the atmosphere. When a believer stands in the morning and declares life, victory, healing, or provision, those words are not empty sounds, but spiritual seeds planted in the soil of time, waiting to manifest throughout the day. The foundation of prophetic declarations is seen in creation itself. God spoke and the universe came into existence. The same principle is mirrored in human life because humanity was made in his image and likeness. This means that words carry creative potential. To declare prophetically is to speak in alignment with heaven's perspective, calling forth realities that may not yet be visible. This is why declarations matter. They shift focus from what is seen to what is promised, from temporary conditions to eternal truths. They bridge the gap between faith and manifestation. One reason prophetic declarations are powerful is that they frame the atmosphere around you. Life is full of voices, fear, doubt, negativity, and even the opinions of others. If left unchecked, those voices dictate emotions and actions. Declarations silence the noise of negativity and establish a spiritual climate of faith. A person who wakes up and declares, "This is the day the Lord has made, I will rejoice and be glad in it," is not ignoring challenges, but is commanding their atmosphere to align with joy and gratitude rather than heaviness. This spiritual shift creates resilience to face difficulties with strength. Declarations also matter because they program the human mind. The subconscious responds to repeated speech, internalizing it as reality. When a person continually speaks words of defeat, they build a mindset of limitation. Conversely, when they declare victory and favor, they train their mind to expect solutions and opportunities. Prophetic declarations are therefore a form of spiritual and mental reprogramming, aligning thought patterns with God's promises rather than with fear. They shape perspective, and perspective often determines outcome. Another dimension of the power of declarations is their ability to send words ahead into the future. Life unfolds in moments, and every day is like a blank canvas. Declarations are brushstrokes on that canvas. Speaking healing in the morning sends strength into the body throughout the day. Speaking provision in times of lack sends opportunities ahead to meet financial needs. Speaking protection sends angels ahead to guard against unseen danger. In this way, declarations become prophetic instructions that organize the unseen realm on behalf of the believer. Declarations matter because they establish spiritual authority. Silence allows circumstances to dictate the narrative, but declarations place the believer in command. When someone says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper," they are not only reminding themselves of scripture, but are also enforcing a divine law in the spiritual realm. Darkness thrives in silence, but declarations shine light into hidden places and force opposition to retreat. Prophetic declarations remind the believer and the unseen world that authority has been given and it must be exercised through words. Finally, prophetic declarations matter because they align the believer with God's will. Prayer often involves asking, but declarations involve agreement. To declare prophetically is to agree with what God has already said. When you declare peace, you are agreeing with his promise to give peace beyond understanding. When you declare provision, you are agreeing with his promise to supply all needs according to his riches. This agreement activates heaven's resources on earth. Declarations are not magic. They are spiritual laws that require alignment with truth. Prophetic declarations matter because they are more than speech. They are instruments of transformation. They create, they shift, they program, they send forth, they enforce, and they align. A believer who ignores declarations risks living under circumstances, but one who embraces them learns to live above circumstances by shaping reality with faith-filled words. Your morning is a gate means that the early hours of the day are not just ordinary moments, but spiritual and strategic entry points that determine the flow of everything that follows. A gate is a place of access, control, and decision, and whoever controls the gate controls what enters and what exits. In the same way, the morning acts as a gate into your day. It is the first point of entry, the threshold that opens into the opportunities, challenges, and experiences ahead. How you handle that gate will determine what kind of influences, atmospheres, and outcomes dominate your life for the rest of the day. In ancient times, gates were not just physical barriers. They were symbols of authority. Battles were often fought at the gates of a city because the one who took control of the gate took control of the city. Leaders made decrees at the gates and judgments were pronounced there. Gates represented government and power. The same is true spiritually. The morning is the gate of your day, and if you do not intentionally govern it, something else will. Whether through distractions, negativity, or careless living, the enemy seeks to occupy the gate. When you lose the morning, you often spend the day reacting instead of ruling. Your morning being a gate explains why it carries such prophetic weight. It is the point where you plant the seeds of words, decisions, and focus that will produce results later. Just as the farmer's harvest depends on the quality of seeds sown in the planting season, the quality of your day depends on what you release at its gate. If your morning is filled with thanksgiving, prayer, and declarations, you are sowing seeds of peace and victory. If it is filled with worry, distractions, or carelessness, you are sowing seeds of confusion that will likely bear fruit later. The gate cannot remain empty. Something will always enter it, whether by intention or neglect. The morning gate also determines the atmosphere of your inner life. Your thoughts and emotions are most impressionable in the first hours after waking. Whatever dominates your mind at that point tends to linger throughout the day. If you allow anger, fear, or negativity to enter the gate, it sets the tone for every interaction and decision. But if you fill the gate with scripture, worship, and declarations of faith, you create a spiritual climate that resists negativity and attracts favor. The gate is where you decide what kind of spirit you will carry into your workplace, your family, and your assignments. Another reason the morning is a gate is that it sets direction. Just as a traveler's first step determines the path they take, your first actions in the morning direct the flow of your energy, focus, and productivity. People who waste their mornings often spend the rest of the day trying to catch up. In contrast, Those who guard their mornings and invest them wisely find that their day flows with clarity and strength. The gate provides momentum, and once it is missed, regaining it can be difficult. The gate of the morning is also a place of spiritual warfare. Just as enemies attack the gates of cities, the adversary attacks the morning with distractions, fatigue, and discouragement. Oversleeping, unnecessary conflicts, or sudden anxieties are often attacks at the gate. The aim is to prevent you from taking charge. But when you recognize the gate and choose to govern it with intentionality, you deny the enemy access. Prayer at the morning gate acts like soldiers standing watch, refusing intrusion and allowing only what aligns with God's will to pass through. Finally, the morning as a gate emphasizes responsibility. Gates do not open themselves. Someone must decide what enters. If you do not take ownership of your morning, life and circumstances will do it for you. Discipline in the morning is therefore an act of governance. When you treat the morning as a gate, you rise with the awareness that it is not just a routine, but a spiritual checkpoint. What you allow in will define what flows out.